We will now call our regular board meeting to order Monday, March 29, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. During the course of the meeting, any discussion of any item on the agenda should be held in executive or closed session. The board will convene in such executive or closed session in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, Section 551.001, Equessential Texas Revised Civil Statutes. Pursuant to the Governor Abbott's temporary suspension of open meetings laws issued on March 16, 2020, and subsequent orders related to COVID-19 and limiting congregations of persons, the board will live stream their meetings so that members of the public may virtually attend the meeting. An electronic copy of the agenda may be viewed at the Dilley ISD website. Public comments should have been submitted as stated on the agendas and will be read aloud during the public comment portion of the board meeting. The open portions of this meeting will be recorded and made available to the public upon request. The subjects to be discussed or considered or upon which any formal action may be taken are listed below. Items do not have to be taken in the same order as shown on this item notice. For more information about public comment, see Board Policy BED. If during the course of the meeting, any discussion of any item on the agenda should be held in executive or closed session, the board will convene in such executive or closed session in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, Section 551.001, Equessential Texas Revised Civil Statutes. Members present, we have J.D. Rodriguez. We now welcome Mr. Ray Aranda, Mr. Frank Torres, Juanita Alvarez, Aida Chapa, Kay Smith, Renee Alvarez, and Dr. Castro. Sir, would you please do the honors?
Yes, ma'am. If you'll bow your heads, please. Recital, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Heavenly Father, today we come to you with a heart of gratitude as we are reflecting on a year ago when schools were shuttered due to this pandemic. With your grace and your love, we have persevered with great leadership from this board, great patience from our parents and students in the greater Dilley community. Father, teach us to remain grateful to you for all the things that we've taken for granted before the pandemic. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Now do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We have no public comments that were submitted, so we'll go straight into our presentations.
Madam President, members of the board, we want to begin tonight with honoring our exiting board member, Ms. Gracie Silva. We do have a small presentation of our appreciation. I do want to take a moment to read a short statement, and then we'll do a brief presentation, and then we'll invite our board president to say any words on behalf of the board as well. Thank you to outgoing board member Gracie Silva. During your tenure as Dilley ISD Board of Trustee, Ms. Silva, we have seen enormous growth in facilities improvements and other academic improvements, including the launch of an early college high school, which provides many of our scholars with college credit and also saves a lot of money in advance of them beginning their academic studies in college. Board service is one of the toughest volunteer roles of all, and you performed it with dedication and tenacity. Ms. Silva, you distinguished yourself as a judicious steward of our school district and community, and I'm certain you never flinched in the face of difficult decisions. A famous activist once said, "Wisdom is knowing what to do next Virtue is doing it. You proved yourself to be both wise and virtuous. I certainly learned a lot from you and about you, especially how professionally and with high integrity you responded when Coach David Silva applied for the athletic director of Dilley ISD. You allowed the process to play out fairly and honestly, and not once did you ask or inquire about the AD search, and you always excused yourself from board discussions related to that search. Absolutely outstanding. I certainly appreciate you. On both a professional and personal level, I am grateful for the time that we got to spend together. You have tirelessly given your time, energy, and resources in service of our kids, teachers, and staff, and the whole Dilley ISD and Dilley ISD community. By all measures, we have improved our service to all because of your membership on this board. If there's only one word in particular that comes to my mind in describing you, it would have to be servant leader. And for that, we are eternally grateful to you, Mrs. Silva. Thank you so much for all you've done for us and for me as well. Godspeed, and thank you so much for your service. And I'll read it so everyone can hear. We do have a plaque for you. I'll take this off. Honoring Gracie Silva in recognition for your 8 years of dedicated service and commitment to Dilley ISD, presented by the Dilley Independent School District, March 2021. So we have a plaque and also your nameplate as a memento.
Did she get her picture on the wall? Take those two first, and then we'll.
Stay awesome.
Castro, did you want to do anything special on the, go in any particular order, just? Okay, at this point. Yeah. That's okay. At this time, we would like to go ahead and convene into executive session at 6:40 p.m. We will now reconvene back into open session at 8:14 p.m. At this time, we have our superintendent's report on the agenda. I'd like to go over some of those items, sir. We have the COVID-19 updates.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We have a number of reports for you this evening under Superintendent's report. The first four, COVID-19 updates, truancy updates, mental health and substance abuse updates, and Dilly Cares updates. I will be giving that presentation. So I want to begin with COVID-19 brief four-year update today. First, as of April 6th, which is next Tuesday, we will end all remote learning. COVID-19 safety protocols will continue for the remainder of the year, with the exception of students that have a medical waiver that is verified from a physician. Additionally, all Dilly ISD employees who wish to get a vaccine for COVID-19 have received one. On April 19th, all employee ISDs who receive their first COVID-19 vaccine will receive their second dose. There you go, yeah. On April 9th, all those who receive their first will receive their second dose. Also on April 9th, any employee who did not receive their first dose because they were waiting for 90 days to expire will have an opportunity to receive their first dose. Also on April 9th, all students 16 years old or older who wish to get their COVID vaccine will be able to receive their first dose. Any questions on that portion of this update?
I think that it's great.
Are we getting a lot of students with medical reasons for not returning?
So far, not a lot. We have a handful district-wide. So far is all we have. I can get you an exact number, or we can ask the principals as they do their presentation. But it's not a lot so far. We are looking at each case individually.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The 16 and older students, we are having permission slips from parents?
Yes, sir. So if you're 16 or 17 years old, it will require a parent waiver and signature. 18 and 19 years old are legal adults, so they can sign for themselves. Very good.
And on the employees, what was the ratio that they were having that you have to wait 90 days for your first one?
So for the individuals who had to wait 90 days, that was because they had COVID previously.
Okay.
And so we had 3 individuals who were not able to get their first dosage because of their 90-day waiting period.
So what is the amount of staff that took advantage of the vaccine?
So we're currently sitting at about 58% of our employees opted to take the vaccine, not including those who had the 90-day waiting period. So that's where we are currently.
But that 58%, there was already some that had already done it even without the school.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. That and with our survey, that's included in the 58. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions on the COVID update?
I think that's great.
Yes, sir. I believe, I don't want to misspeak, but most, if not all, of our cafeteria A+ workers were vaccinated. Thank you. Want to also just give you a brief update on truancy and live instruction. Truancy will begin to be enforced more rigorously as we move into full live instruction as of April 6th. We have not filed truancy cases due to remote live instruction and back and forth. But in speaking with Judge Flores, we are moving in that direction to begin looking at and filing truancy cases where appropriate. Every effort will be made with parents, students, and the municipal court prior to unenrolling truant students. So what does that mean? You are required to come back live. You still don't come back live, you're now truant. You're not attending school live. So, again, that's going to be our last effort, but we will take every effort to ensure that students and parents have an opportunity to engage live instruction. And again, as stated, a physician-confirmed medical exhibition will be the only way that you are able to continue with remote instruction through the duration of this school year. We are in collaboration with Judge Flores on what that truancy effort needs to look like. Judge Flores has been super awesome with us. He's worked with us, including myself, building principals, and other staff. Judge Flores has been part of our efforts with home visits, and now in the truancy. Thank you, Matthew. And the truancy filings again will begin begin again in full force in April. Questions on truancy and live instruction? Okay, moving on to mental health and substance abuse. One of the sad, and a little bit disturbing, but really to me it's more sad than anything, is we're starting to see a number of cases at the middle school and high school where students are utilizing drugs, particularly marijuana. So I want to really try to refocus us from just looking at punishment versus, I know, Ms. Alvarez, you keep championing social emotional learning referral process. So we're working on designing social emotional learning support system for next year to include drug abuse, drug addiction, and then there's the cool factor. Well, what does that mean? Drug abuse and drug addiction are very different. Drug abuse is I'm just using drugs a lot, regularly. I'm just abusing it. I'm not addicted. That's different. I'm just abusing it. Drug addiction, that's more hardcore. I have a serious problem where I'm now addicted. And then the third one is I'm just trying to be cool because I know a guy or a friend who uses it, or it might be a family member who uses drugs. So I'm just trying to be cool. Those are all three different things. We don't have that expertise to work and deal with that. So what we have done is initiated a partnership with South Texas Rural Health Services, who have trained counselors in that area of mental health and substance abuse. And so what we are working on, and we're starting to collaborate with them for that referral process. The nice thing about South Texas Rural Health Services, can you move it up for me, Matthew? They have agreed to train our counselors and other staff in recognizing, the symptoms and signs. What can I as a counselor do, as a teacher? What can I do with kids who are struggling? When is it above my skill set? When do I need to make the referral to South Texas Rural Health Services? So they have staff that are willing and able to work with us. We had a great meeting with them last week to launch this partnership to begin other services. This will not be the only partner that we're seeking out, but this is what we're launching with in a few weeks. Actually, I'm seeing if we can get something going Friday for two young people that need the service at this juncture. The other thing about what I really appreciate about South Texas Rural Health Services is they don't only treat the student. They don't just work with the individual child. They counsel the entire family. And to me, that's the only way this gets done correctly, is if we get the whole family involved in supporting the efforts of our students. Any questions on mental health and substance abuse before we go on to our final topic?
I was going to ask you, we're talking here mainly about drugs, the substance abuse, but how about the emotional part of it?
Yes, ma'am. I focused on the drug and substance abuse because that's what we're dealing with right now, is more kids coming from home, from remote instruction. But it does include both mental health referrals and substance. Thank you for mentioning it, because in the title I put mental health. We're going to go full force into both. But for the initial launch, it's a heavy focus on the substance piece because that's right now timely. There's no reason why we can't do both at the same time. They're willing to train our staff and counselors on both right away. Great question. And then finally, as a brief update with Dilly Cares, we have filed the DBA, doing business as with Frio County for that name, so we own that name. We are still working to finalize a 501c3 nonprofit status with the IRS. The inaugural members, you see them there, our facilities manager Jose Aranda, city manager Juan Estrada, County Commissioner Jose Asuncion, Chief of Police Homer Delgado, and myself for the inaugural members as we continue the work. These are just a few of the projects that we've launched, even though we're not fully IRS. We're just working now as private individuals. Juan Estrada and his wife have begun doing some fence repair for residents in Dilley. On the right side, you see my wife and I. We are sanding the first part of that railing at the main city park. She did not want to use the drill with the, I don't know why, it's a lot easier. She's doing the wire brush steel wool at the bottom part. So we spent a couple hours there this weekend priming the bars. We've procured permission from City Council to go and sand that down. We're going to paint it Dilley maroon, and then we're going to replace the trash receptacles with maroon receptacles and the Dilley wolves. Again, that's just two of the projects that we're working on. The bigger one that's just really our heart is that one. I don't know if you all are aware, we currently have 26 residents in Dilley that still have no water. That blew me away. In conjunction with Jose Asuncion and Jose Aranda, we have begun visiting houses in Dilley. This one particular situation, one of our Dilley residents, I think she's 78 years old, is a widower and has no family here and cannot afford to get that fixed. That individual under the trailer home is Mr. Aranda. As we assessed that, when I say we, it's mostly him. I can just hold flashlights, but he's the expert in the group between the three of us. He's like, yeah, this one, I can repair this one. So we're scheduling the repair on that home. Plumbers Without Borders were here a week and a half ago. They did leave some supplies, some piping supplies. We were hopeful that they were going to actually do the repair. They didn't want to. But they helped us assess the 26 homes and residents, et cetera, that needed help. But we thought they were going to get the work done. They did not. That's okay. We have some materials and supplies they've left behind. But 26 residents without water, that blows my mind. And I'll close on this. We're not going to be able to help all 26. Some of that will require getting into walls, getting into deep places where we're going to have more liability than we're able to cover as private individuals. I'm hopeful that we'll soon be able to finalize our 501c3. Right now, we've just been out of pocket with our efforts, the five of us. So once we get 501c3 status, at that point, God forbid, is if there's ever an issue that requires someone to want to seek some kind of reclamation, they can't go after the city, they can't go after the school district, they can't go after the county, they can go after the LLC, the Limited Liability Corporation, or the 501c3 nonprofit. So we do meet during lunch. Our lunchtime is when we meet as a group, and we start our any work that we do, we start at after hours or on weekends. Right now, we've only done work on the weekends. So I did want to give you just a brief on Dilley Cares and where we are and where we intend to continue to ameliorate and improve the community we live in. Any question on Dilley Cares?
Elderly or handicapped?
Yeah, so both. We have. I don't. We have a list. I don't think I have the list with me, but we have. I want to say 4 or 5 residents over 70, and we do have some handicap situations. Those are going to require at least one resident needs a ramp. Just needs a ramp built. Wood's kind of expensive, but as we move forward, as you see the documentation of pictures and all that, as we seek partners in the future, what we're hopeful is we get some big corporate sponsors, and then we'll start seeking some grants, some state or federal grants that might allow us to continue this work and not be hindered by dollars.
Do y'all communicate with any of the churches around? I
Yes,
know
ma'am,
they
great
assist.
question. And the answer is not yet. Here's why, like, for instance, the wire brushes and wools, I bought 10 myself out of pocket. So what we're doing right now is just kind of doing small scope work. And as we get more supplies and materials so that we can get an army of people, we'll start inviting more people. But certainly churches will be one of the first places we go to invite for volunteers, and then financial contributions if they're able to as well. That's coming, but we are starting to launch and get better organized, because right now we're kind of small scope work.
With experiences before, the churches go out and help a lot.
Yes, ma'am, exactly.
And at our church, at the Catholic Church, we have St. Vincent de Paul Society. And I know Pastor Lance over here always assists.
So it sounds like I probably need to reach out to them sooner rather than later. Thank you for that. Yes, ma'am. We've spoken, and we're getting ready to coordinate a meeting. Thank you so much. Any other questions on this aspect? Very good.
Moving on, we have the principal's report.
Yes, ma'am. At this juncture, we do have our principals that will be debriefing with you today. And today, their focus will be on special education. We will begin with elementary and then move on to high school. Mr. Martinez, when you're ready. Mr. Martinez. Sir. Mr. Martinez. Sir, can you hear me? You were muted on our end. Would you mind starting over? We didn't hear the beginning of your presentation.
Good evening.
Students for the elementary campus at 64 students. At that time, 41 students were in-school students and 23 were remote students. As of last week, our counts, we had dropped a couple of students. We do have some fluctuations. Some students enroll or they unenroll, withdrawal, leave to another town for various numbers of reasons. And 62 students currently, with 53 students in school and 9 students currently remote students. So with that, remote students, 9, as Dr. Castro mentioned, as we anticipate here, April the 6th, having more and more students return back. My current count, we have roughly about 5 students that will remain remote students that have submitted doctor's documentation. So we will have a majority of our students return back for the special education program. Some challenges that we've had here. As we began the year, one of the tasks that the special education department was doing was creating continuity plans in order to be able to service students, whether they were going to be in-school students or remote students. So they had to do two schedules, as if a student would be participating in school in a normal school environment, and as if they were going to be participating in a remote setting online outside of school. So being able to make sure that all of those were in place and had a chance to be able to have the school year start. Some of the things that we learned right out the gate was the technology and having students be able to log in, be able to have opportunity, be able to see their teachers and interact with their teachers. It was a little difficult for our elementary students, primarily our elementary students, especially with the little ones, but as they continue to go up, it gets a little bit easier. But the little ones are very, very dependent on their parents to be able to help them log on and to be able to have where ensuring that they are able to get onto the computer. So whether it be with their iPads or their Chromebooks, that was something that was a little bit of a challenge for our kiddos at the elementary campus. Maintaining and having successful parent contacts. I know our staff members were making phone calls, sending messages, conducting home visits. It was a little bit difficult for some cases with some parents to be able to have a successful contact where the parent was not only just reading the message or viewing the message, but they were actually responding back. And then we would actually see either some work or some tasks being completed. So early on, that was a little bit of a struggle. We were, in some cases, making contact with them, but having that secondary piece of having the actual work assignments getting completed, some of those were a little bit of a challenge. We did have, unfortunately, some students that missed sessions and that were required makeup sessions, so we had to be able to work through those. And again, student attendance, again, some of the technology, we had some cases where, and with our students, I mean, them being very small, sometimes we had some damages to technology that were required technology department to fix and provide repairs. And so that way they could be able to continue their learning. So we had to work through some of those challenges as well. But I'm happy to say, I mean, it's where we worked through some of those things. Students, as they are transitioning back, because as we did start, we did have quite a few that were remote students. Now, like I said, we're under 10 students that are in a remote environment. But as they were coming back in school, they did have a little bit of a transition period, as any other students did as well. So we had to adjust and reintegrate them back into the school. Just being at home, you're not having the full amount of hours as you would just sitting in class and being in the schoolhouse for a full day's school. So that was a little bit of an adjustment as well. Having them also have their instructional accommodations. That was also another focus of concern that we had at the very, very beginning of the school year as we worked through that. Getting them to be able to have revisions in order to be able to best serve the students' needs inside the classroom. And we also, we did not have a special education staff member designated as a campus coordinator. So we did also have that area of need at the beginning. ARD meetings, making sure that everyone on the campus had a good understanding of the roles and responsibilities. And then I give you a little bit of information also on just how our students performed, special education students, even when it came down to grades. Unfortunately, we did have students that were not successful always on their 6 weeks grade. So I give you a little bit of a breakdown on there. For the first 6 weeks, we did have 5 students that failed. Second 6 weeks, 8 students. Third 6 weeks, 8 students. And we closed the last grading period with a little bit of an increase as 12 students. As we progressed through the year, the work, the assignment does get a little bit more challenging. And again, that's reflective as well as our students were needing some additional help and support. Some of the efforts that we've included here throughout the year, we do have weekly meetings on the campus with special education teachers and administration in order to review session logs. Special education teachers and staff members are required to document their service time that they have and their efforts with the students. So we review those. We discuss any concerns or issues that are needed to be addressed and develop plans in order to be able to address them. Scheduling is also discussed and adjustments made based on those things. Staff members, again, we've made a lot of efforts in regards to phone calls, remind messages, text messages, home visits for special education students and their families. So that's also something that's ongoing and will continue to take place here throughout the year. At the elementary campus, we do have where students in the special education environment, we do have in-class support where we do have staff members that go inside the classroom and help and assist their academics. We do also have a resource classroom where students are pulled out to be able to help with additional service and support with a special education teacher. And then we also do have a life skills unit that for areas of qualification, students are able to have a life skills classroom should they qualify for that option. Again, we've been able to provide a lot of academic support, direct learning support for students in class, and then also as we've had the remote setting, we've utilized various programs, including Google Classroom. We've also transitioned into using the Canvas program. We've also been able to have students and teachers communicate via Zoom and Google Meets, and that's been ongoing throughout the year. And even as we were able to identify and find the need for those students to have some makeup services, we also did incorporate more opportunities throughout the day and also outside of the school day to be able to have those students be able to service or get serviced. We also did identify a campus coordinator. Ms. Chloe Torres is on our campus, and she is our campus coordinator for the special education department on our campus. And then we've also utilized Ms. Bright. She's been a wonderful breath of fresh air here for us this year in order to help and assist and maintain good positive lines of communication for our parents. I'd like to share just very briefly some successes that we had. As I mentioned earlier, we have a majority of our special education students that have returned back to in-school learning. What we've identified throughout the course of the year is the best place for the children to be academically is in the schoolhouse. And we have a better chance to be able to ensure that we have that success going on in the classroom as they have the chance to make their way back inside the school. So that's been a very, very big, huge success as our numbers have been able to increase in school. Staff members have received professional development constantly throughout the year. The documentation system that we use, MSBX logs, they've been able to have those trainings. Instructional accommodations, we've been able to have some trainings in instructional accommodations and modifications, components of the ARD meetings, also how to write effective goals and how to write proper narratives. We've been able to also have our life skills unit, they've been able to utilize some very good and creative skills that they have there. And I know our life skills teacher, Mrs. Aguilar, has been able to take advantage of that and provide several opportunities for cooking and creations that they are doing throughout the year. I think their last project, they were making some homemade ice cream inside the life skills unit. So the kids enjoy those type of projects, and anytime they can be able to cook, you know, there's sometimes even where they surprise me, they'll knock on my door and they have a cupcake that they made and want to share it because they're proud of those things, and we encourage them to be able to continue to do those things. The staff members, again, we've also had professional development in just the ARD meetings. We've been able to make some growth and developments, making sure that we have more understandings of the roles and responsibilities that we have had. Also, our ARD meetings this year have been held virtually, and we've had a high number of parents participating virtually. We've been able to give them their preference in regards to how to receive the paperwork. Some of them prefer to have it sent via the mail. Others prefer to have it via email. So it just depends on how their preference, but we've had our parents very supportive in participating in our meetings consistently throughout the year. And again, the teachers, general education and special education students or teachers are providing daily intervention opportunities and being able to progress monitor. Documentation of that progress monitor is also kept in our data system. And then our campus coordinator, Mrs. Torres, has worked with the campus and district level personnel in order to provide services and support, and it's something that we continue to do that. And we've also been able to receive a lot of help and support from our special education staff member, Ms. Vega, at the district level, so she's been able to help support and facilitate a lot of the efforts that we've had here. But in closing, just very, very proud of the progress that we've made here with the special education department, the direction that we're going. I believe that we've been able to make a substantial amount of progress, even throughout the face of a pandemic, and we'll continue to make those efforts. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Martinez?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How many special ed teachers do you have in your campus?
Currently, we have 3 special education teachers servicing the students on the campus, sir.
So you have 3 teachers?
Designated special education teachers, yes, sir.
So that means each teacher has an average of, there's 62 students, right?
Yes, sir, currently enrolled.
So each teacher has about 20 kids?
Depending, just because of the fact that we do have one life skills teacher that has currently in hers, she does have those students that are just qualifying for life skills, but that is something too that she has 13 kids that she sees over there in life skills, but the remainder are split within the two special education teachers, Ms. Hurt and Ms. Flores. Yes, sir.
Dr. Is that pretty good? Pretty good average?
That average, in my opinion, is a bit high. Ideally, to improve service, it would be prudent to look at another teacher for special education. That is a bit high of a caseload.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Martinez, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
After your art meetings or to plan your IEPs with them, are we getting a lot of help from the outside resources that we need? Like speech therapy, and is the cluster being able to provide some assistance with all of the other activities that we don't do for them or services?
Yes, ma'am. You know, we do have constant communication when it comes down to the cluster and being able to work with even the speech department. You know, we do communicate very regular with them. If there are any needs or questions, they've always been very supportive in being able to answer or help us facilitate anything with those particular students on the campus. So yes, we have been able to coordinate and work well with them at the co-op level.
So they do come into our district or to the elementary and have services for us if needed?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Earlier this year, they did have where some of their services for the speech were being conducted remotely, and then we were able to make a change where they were able to send us an additional staff member from the co-op to be able to help facilitate for those students to receive speech services inside the school. I believe the issue was more a staff member was on leave and then returned back. So we have resumed having that staff member come back in, and she has continued to service the speech students in person as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Elementary, there's two different types of special eds, right? There's those small kids and the older kids?
Sort of, yeah. The smaller unit is life skills for the younger students.
Childhood special education.
Yeah, you generally in a lot of places it's called PPCD, a preschool program for children with disabilities.
Okay.
And those are the munch, because those are the real little ones.
And we have one teacher covering all,
Yes, sir.
from
With
grade to fifth grade.
correct. Which is another pretty broad span of ask.
Yeah. Have you looked into that?
We're looking at it now on staffing. To split it would put the upper grades with like very few. We would have like one teacher with like maybe 3 or 4 kids. Ms. Vega have little. So that's something I'm happy to do. It would be a particularly small unit.
I'm not an educational expert,
Yeah.
but I just want to make sure we're
Yeah,
servicing those kids the right way.
Absolutely. We are reviewing staffing at this juncture, and we'll be coming back in April with some staffing points and recommendations. It's a good question, sir. Thank you.
Anything else? Not, we have the special education reports, Ms. Vega?
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Who's next?
thank you. Yes, Ms. Harris.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Board President and members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Castro. This is the special education report, Mary Harper Middle School. All I just are over for current special education services for our 109 students. And so this a little bit of our students, 20% services include supports on each EP. The implementation of these plans
Principal Harris.
which in our patient.
Ms. Harris. Ms. Harris, we can hear you, but it's,
Hear me?
yeah, we can hear you, but it's very echoey.
I
I'm
can
not
hear-
sure we understood what you were saying. Yeah, can you try again? It's very, very spotty. Did she drop? Okay. She's having trouble. Hopefully she'll be able to log back on. Mr. Solis, let's go ahead and proceed with you at this juncture.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, perfectly.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Castro. I know you've received my board report and it's pretty lengthy. I kind of want to go over some of the senior stuff I added in there. I know I've been sending this out to you guys weekly. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. I just know some of the topics on there are very important, and I just want to make sure that they're kind of been texted out there. I want to kind of go over some of those, just to I guess explaining things and you guys some time to ask any questions that you need. I know I've been sharing out about our seniors and where they are going with graduation. The past few weeks, I've been stating there's 7 seniors that we're working with to make sure that they reach their goal of graduation. Right now, we're at 8. We identified a student who has kind of regressed over the 4th and 5th, 6 weeks, and we work with that individual to make sure that that person's back on track. But of those original 7, 3 of those students have made up their first semester credits. So we're very happy for them. So now they're just focusing on second semester credit. But unfortunately, they are struggling a little bit here in the 5th, 6 weeks. So we're a little concerned about them, and we're putting some more attention on those kids and giving them some extra pull-out time. So we pull them out during the activity period to work with the teachers to make up work. We also pull them in the afternoon to make sure they make up work. But we have 4 students that we're really, really concerned about because we've given them an AIP, which is an academic improvement plan to make up the first semester. They're struggling to do that, and they're struggling to keep up with their second semester grades as well. But with them too, we pull them during activity period to work with a teacher. A couple of them, we don't let them leave school. We kind of hold them hostage and send them to a teacher so they can make up their work for the current semester. And we have 2 individuals, Miss Elisa Counselor and Miss Starnes, our library aide. We actually working with them for their first semester credit that they need as well. There's 1 student there, or 2 students that are attendance issues of those 4. That means they're having trouble getting to school on time. And there's 1 who hasn't been coming to school. And actually, Miss Elisa and I have gone to pick them up last week a couple of times to make sure he gets to school so that he can finish and graduate. But he did good the first couple of times, but as the week wore on, he stopped answering the door on us. So we're not gonna give up on him. We're gonna still keep trying to get him to come, get in to finish. So right now, we're looking at about 58 of those kids graduating for sure, but those 4, on the verge there of not doing it. But we're not giving up on them, and we're going to work to the very end. And our goal is to get 100% of those students graduated. Do you guys have any questions on that before I proceed on?
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Solis? No, sir.
No. I do want to share a couple of dates with you guys. Graduation, I did a survey of parents and students. The majority of parents did want to keep graduation May 28th, which is a Friday at 8 p.m. As part of the, I guess, how the program is going to go. It all depends on what TA is going to issue in terms of guidance and requirements for, capacity and social distancing. If all that gets better, we don't have to worry about those 2 factors, and we'll have a traditional graduation like Delia has always had, using the field and everybody, celebrating together. But if those restrictions are still in place by the time graduation comes, we'll still use the plan we did last year with, group seating, spacing, a limited number of family members on the field. I am going to bump that up to 3 this year, 3 family members on the track instead of 2 as from last year. So I know a couple of families are already happy on that part. And the only restriction we have with that, of course, is spacing. We don't want to go out too far, and the number of seats that we have that can hold everybody down the track. The stage has been rented. We've gotten seats plus some extra ones to help out with those three, or the extra seat for the parents down on the track. If we need to, we'll pull some from the building and use student chairs, but we like to keep them consistent for the look there. Also, prom is gonna happen May 1st, so that's moving ahead. They got their theme, they got budget going. They're having a meeting again this week to try to start working out decorating schedules and stuff like that. They are contemplating two things here. One is either to have it at the elementary cafeteria, where they've always had it in the past, but some students have expressed some interest in having it actually in their own high school, and maybe using the cafeteria for the dining spot and using the gym as a dance floor. But I mean, we got to look at that and see if that's even possible. I know we're always concerned about damaging the floor, but I was at the floor the other day. It already needs some repair. There's some chipping going on with the paint. So I know normally they kind of refurbish that floor every summer. So that's going to happen this summer, and I don't think there'll be an issue with some kids dancing on the floor and enjoying their own prom in their own building. But that's up for discussion as we move forward. We're also going to keep doing that senior parade like we did last year. That's actually set for May 14th at 6:30 p.m. And that's going to be after the college signing day, and we planned that intentionally so the kids, once they sign for college, they can kind of use that as a motivation and have some time to get decorations for their vehicles, to kind of decorate it for their for themselves individually and where they're going to college. Of course, we also got to talk with the city about the route approval. We do want a little different route than what was used at the homecoming parade. We thought that wasn't very safe, being lined up down over here on Business 35 South, pretty much where Miss Smith lives and I live. We didn't like that. It was very unsafe for the kids. They said they were going to block off the highway, but they never did. So we had a lot of traffic going by while kids were outside the vehicle trying to decorate. So we're going to try to move back to keep it here in the parking lot at the high school, decoration there, and kind of maybe use the same route. And so that's where we're heading out with that part. Also, there's a senior college scholarship banquet May 11th. That is still going on. We're still keeping that for this year. And we're continuing with the senior posters that we did actually, the yard signs. We are in the process of getting the high resolution video, pictures for those from Life Touch to get that sent out. We're working on the PO to get those yard signs made. And again, like last year, they'll be placed out from the high school for everybody to see. The graduation, the day of graduation, we take them off, we go put them by their chair, and we put them there so that the fans can see from the stadium seats down to the chair, and of course, it's some momentum for them to take home and to keep for they can put on their wall, something like that. Also, Ms. Solis has been working on a senior recognition poster for the inside of the high school. Those are getting printed here pretty soon. Those are going to go up on the walls around the high school to celebrate the seniors in there as well. Senior trip. Most seniors are voting for no senior trip. They want the disbursement of funds and use that to celebrate their senior year, I guess the last day, how they want to see fit. But that is not totally set yet. I told the senior sponsors to have another meeting to make sure that is what they really want before moving forward with that. And there's still some time to reconsider, but time is running out because they will have to make reservations. They're going to go somewhere. So if they're going to decide to go on a senior trip, they got to do it here pretty quickly. If not, they're going to be stuck with a disbursement instead of going somewhere. Any questions on those pieces regarding seniors?
Are we still having a sports banquet?
Yes, I believe that's still going on. I need to talk to Coach Silva on when he's going to have that.
And what about the FFA?
The FFA banquet? If we're going to have prom, then we're going to have those. I need to get with those two individuals and make sure that gets scheduled.
Anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Solis? Thank you, sir.
All right, now I can go into my sped part. I'll try to make this brief as possible. I know I take a lot of time on the senior side. In my report, I included my sped numbers from the beginning of the year to now. We started out with 45 at the beginning of the year. We're now at 54. The good thing about it, our remote numbers have dropped drastically. We only have 9 students who are remote right now. They're special ed. The majority of those students are on campus, in-person learners, which is good. But I included some data on there with the students, sped students, and the data kind of speaks for itself. Special ed students are struggling. They struggled being remote, and now they're on campus. They're still struggling, and that's just a sign that there's a gap there with their learning because they missed out on a lot of important information being at home and not always participating, because our participation rate for special ed students was kind of low during the remote time. You know, the staff did a great job contacting parents, emailing parents, calling parents to promote participation, to encourage kids to get on and participate in instruction. But it was a struggle, but staff didn't give up. They continued to do it. They actually still do it now. So we got a majority of special ed students back on campus. Now, in terms of this year as compared to last year, it's better than high school. This year's early on in years, I would say about late September, early October, I started my weekly special ed staff meeting with my special ed teachers and aides, and include my AP and the counselor. The main purpose of that was to really start preparing for our arts that we're going into. Sometimes we're walking in kind of blind last year. The information wasn't being shared on what the art was going to look like, or what the IEP or any changes was going to happen with the IEP. So now we have this weekly communication that lasts 30 minutes through to an hour. And then we've done some MSB log narrative reviews. So we'll pull up a random special ed entry on the student, talk about what did that person, the special ed teacher or aide, see in the class, how the student did, what they entered, whether there any success, was there any progress noted and documented in there. And also to see, is it working? There's the evidence that the accommodations or modifications being provided that student is effective. And of course, if not, then what can we do moving forward with that student? And also kind of help them kind of think of other narratives when they go with other students. Because like I told them, it's all information for us as administrators. When we go to art, we look at the information and we use that to make decisions on the students IEP. So whatever they put in the MSB logs is very important. Also, we established an art administrator. Sometimes, we have meetings in central office. Like I'm not on campus on Wednesday sometimes. Even though I like to be the primary administrator for art, sometimes I am called away. So we established who is going to be the administrator. But in the case that I'm absent, the other two know what's going on, can step in and kind of take over the art and know that where we're going with the student and what's going to be kind of decided in the art meeting. I also tell to the counselor and the AP that make sure that you talk with their parent and notify the parent that decisions made there, not just the special ed teacher or the diag or the art facilitator. The decision comes down to that parent and the student and the administrator. We encourage parents to voice concerns, to speak out. What do the kid needs? Do they think those accommodations are working or not? To really be a voice, and that's their opportunity to speak up and make sure that we're doing the best for their kid. And also, we've gone on through the year to talk about collaboration with teachers to make sure that in the classroom, the teachers are implementing the IEP. We make sure that they communicate and look at those assignments or those activities in the lesson and work with the teacher to provide those accommodations, those modifications for students that are individualized. Make sure that's going on. And to kind of support both of those throughout the year, we're providing PD for SPED teachers and aides. Talk about lesson plan sharing, make sure that's being shared out. So we did some training on that. I did a PD on what is the role of the general teacher, what is the role of the special ed teacher, and what is the role of the actual aide. So we did that early on in the year. And also we've done some PD on differentiation and planning and documentation and implementation of the IEP by teachers in the classroom, because they are the programs, they're the ones that are working with the kid, and they're going to be most effective with the student other than the special ed teacher. We also done some MSD logs with the special education staff and aides. Of course, we've been doing those log reviews with them as well. Throughout the year, and we were asynchronous in the beginning. As we moved on towards December and January, we did implement a synchronous instructional model for students, especially those with special education. So I asked special education teachers and aides when they went to the classroom to take their laptop with them and to turn on and join the Zoom and kind of show the class with that student and record it and make sure that the student was able to see the instruction and then turn around to themselves and be able to provide the one-on-one for that student. So we had that program going on probably late November, December, and January. And then right around January, we started implementing our makeup hour plan. On Wednesdays, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, our special ed coordinator for the campus, Mr. Vino, started offering additional contact time for special education students after school from 4 to 5. Parents were called, the students were notified that they can join from 4 to 5 and get some extra special education service time by a special education teacher, either Ms. Trevino or Mr. Rodriguez. So they started doing that in January. There were some hours they had to make up. They made up those hours. But using that program, which now on Wednesdays as well, they offer extra time for those remote kids. We meet our service minutes every week, which I'm happy to say. So that means every kid is getting their service time that's allowed to by their IEP. For right now, that's what I have in terms of my report on special education. Unless you have any questions for me.
Anybody have anything? No?
Mr. Solis, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What kind of assistance are we doing for our students that are at the age of 18 or 20 and they're ready to move on out into the community? Are we referring them or parents being informed with this kind of transition?
Yes, ma'am. At the beginning, around 16, transition is invited to the art meetings, and they start providing them resources and links to outside agencies to help them out. And also the transition coordinator stays in contact with the student every year. They'll meet with them, if not more, to provide them resources. Also, the counselor will help out as well, making sure that they're either hooked up with a workforce, exit workforce, or any other kind of programs that they have. Also, there at the high school, we have the OSHA certification, so we have a couple of kids that are in that program as well to get an OSHA certification, and they're linked up with a teacher there on the campus to help them work through that program.
Okay, so we are giving out referrals for these individuals that can go out into community now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solis. Ms. Harris, let's try again, see if our internet's connected.
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, perfect.
Okay, I'm actually not going to turn on my camera just to ensure that I don't disconnect from my internet. So the following is the special education special report for Mary Harper Middle School. And I will begin by giving a brief overview of our campus. So Mary Harper Middle School provides special education services for 54 out of our 197 students. So this makes up a little over a quarter of our student population at 27% receiving services. Services include providing supports based upon each student's IEP. And the implementation of these plans take place in the student's least restrictive environment. For our campus, that would mean maybe within the general education setting or through our life skills classroom. For our special education, where our learner settings currently are, in-person versus remote, I'm going to go ahead and give a few numbers here. For our 6th grade, we currently have 16 students receiving special education, and 16 of those students are in person. So we have 100% of our 6th grade students in person with us. For 7th grade, we have a total of 25 students, and 21 of those students are in person, and 4 of those students are remote, which puts us at 84% in person for 7th grade. For 8th grade, we service 13 students, and 13 of those students are in person. So right now we service 100% of our 8th grade special education students in person. So total, we have 54 students receiving services, 50 in person, and 4 remote currently. For our special education attendance, again, of course, with some of the COVID issues that we went through, especially in cycle 3, Mary Harper did have to close for a week, but our attendance percentage for the third 6 weeks was 77%. In the fourth 6 weeks, our attendance did go up increased to 81%. And again, we're still looking at that number in regards to the 54 students. Students receiving ESL services, we do have 3 students that also receive ESL services along with special education services. For our special education staff, in our general education, we have 2 full-time teachers for middle school and 4 inclusion support at the middle level. For life skills, we have 1 life skills full-time teacher for both middle and high school. And then we have 4 life skills inclusion support for both middle and high school. So we share 1 unit between the 2 campuses, and we have 1 life skills teacher. For our remote learners, the art committee meetings were held to develop continuity plans, as explained earlier by Mr. Martinez, to where we took a look at how much time students receive for support services while they were remote versus in person. So those minutes change depending on which learning environment the student is in. The continuity plans were implemented during remote instruction, and inclusion support collaborated with general education teacher. They made phone calls and sent emails to encourage students to participate on Zoom. And again, this has been one of our high priorities this school year. I know ever since I came in late October, this has been something on our radar to ensure that we were able to service our students remotely through Zoom and just being able to provide them the instructional opportunities. So inclusion support has been a huge part of that. And we also include them in ensuring that they're reaching out to parents. So frequent communication with parents and students has been key for our campus. I did give one example. We do send out reminder emails to the students. It lists what days of the week, what times, and also the Zoom link for the students. And our students are learning now how to also respond back and say, hey, this is when I need help, or I need help with a particular assignment. So we're starting to see the communication start to go both ways. And the inclusion support has embraced the technology. I've asked them to create their own Zoom accounts. I've also provided the training on how to use the Zoom breakout rooms so that when they are within these classrooms, they can break out and provide that individualized support when they're on Zoom. We also changed how we logged our parent contacts. So now we are logging it on a Google form. So for the semester 2 so far, from January 4th to March 26th, to these 54 students, we have sent out a little over 1,000 communications to the students. So it's approximately 20 contacts per student this second semester. As far as instructional strategies, we have continually provided the staff with professional development. This has been done not only through myself, but also with our special education campus coordinator, and then also the district campus coordinator, Ms. Vega. But one strategy in particular that the inclusion support has been using is the Marquez reading strategy. And we provided that training on January the 4th to both teachers and inclusion support to utilize these strategies. And what the Marquez reading strategy, it helps our students improve their reading fluency, and essentially it helps students think through the text-based material that they're reading. As far as monitoring, I do meet frequently with my inclusion support team. We do take a look at their MSB logs and what they are help assisting the student with, and how to write their narratives and correctly enter in information. So I also ask them for recommendations on any training that we need, and any areas that I see that we maybe have some gaps in, we set up those additional trainings and provide them with that support. My special education coordinator, Ms. Adiano, meets weekly with the inclusion support team to monitor progress of services, and administration regularly meets with the district special education coordinator, and again, our campus coordinator and inclusion support staff to review the logs, troubleshoot any concerns, and discuss training next steps. Regular campus reports are provided by the campus special education coordinator and also the district coordinator. And then administrators do attend the weekly ARDs. And one thing that we do try to do is point out areas of clarification. For example, when students or the diagnostician is giving the results of their testing, truly trying to break it down to where a parent can understand what the numbers mean and not just kind of float over it and continue. Usually the teacher reports are pretty direct. They kind of give us a good idea of what the students' capabilities are within the classroom and abilities are. So that's what we try to provide during our ARD meetings while we are there with the parents. And so I'm very proud of our team. They have done a lot of work in, number one, embracing the technology and learning how to truly use it and begin reaching out to our students. But of course, with COVID and students being at home, we are noticing some gaps. So we are looking forward to ensuring that we try to bridge those gaps by providing additional support. So they're finding the times in the day that we can provide additional assistance to our students at this time. And so at this time, this concludes my presentation. Do I have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harris. Madam President, members of the board, to close out our special ed education update, as you all know, the inclusion teacher is the general ed teacher is the primary teacher to provide quality first instruction, tier 1 instruction. High quality starts in every classroom with every general ed teacher. The special ed inclusion teachers are there in the event that students are struggling to provide additional access and support for students. So it's not special ed, it's something different. Special ed students are regular general ed students first and foremost, but then it's up to us through the principal, the teacher, special ed inclusion teacher, and then it's centrally for us to provide those supports for students to access it to success. So to close us out, we're going to talk a little bit about the sort of central administration level and some of the efforts that we've started and continued throughout this year. Ms. Vega?
I should say. So I believe everybody received the PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to go over it briefly. I know our administrators covered a lot of it through their reports. Some of the areas that I'm going to cover today includes our special education participants and non-participants, the ARD process, our progress reporting, district trainings, the documentation system that we're using, transition, student records, SSES, campus coordinators, our staffings prior to ARDs, our reevaluations, and our cyclical review. This year, with the COVID situation that we did face, we saw our numbers start off for our non-participants higher than we would have liked to see. And in my presentation that I provided to you, you'll see a graph for each campus, and it's broken down by 6 weeks. You'll see your level of non-participants go down from the beginning of the first 6 weeks to our fifth 6 weeks. And a lot of that was because of the efforts that the campus staff, yes, sir. So our non-participation are students who we could not get to do any kind of work. We couldn't get them to respond to emails. We couldn't get them to respond to reminds. We couldn't get parents to be involved. So there was actually very minimal to no work turned in. Although we did provide services, they were non-active. So our participants include any on-campus or remote learners that made some sort of effort to engage in instruction during those 6 weeks. So during our first 6 weeks, again, there was a big struggle to get a lot of our special education students on those virtual sessions. But through diligent efforts and consistent communication, the amount of special education students that were being serviced did increase each 6 weeks. Many of the students did not meet their IEP services due to the lack of participation. However, each of our campuses did create makeup sessions to give those students the opportunity to recover any IEP services that they lacked. Virtual sessions were created with special education teachers as well as our paraprofessionals, and they were sent out on a regular basis. Emails were sent out letting remote learners know that support was available, and they were provided direct links for those services. We continued with our parent and student contacts through phone calls, reminds, home visits. And again, that was a big part of how we were able to get those numbers to go down. Are there any questions as far as our participation and non-participants? Thank you. The next area that we've really started to make an impact this year in regards to special education is our ARD process. When we look at the ARD process for previous years, it was all different. So what was happening at the elementary wasn't what you'd see at the middle school, wasn't what you had seen at the high school. Some of our ARDs were staying open for a long period of time. So we could have had an ARD in August and it wouldn't be closed until springtime. Teacher input forms, which are a big part of the ARD process, they were not consistent. So some teachers may submit it at this campus and not this campus. Our goal writing, progress reporting, and the IEP services and supports were just not consistent at times. So what we wanted to do this year was we wanted to align things district-wide. We wanted to make sure that what's being done at the elementary was being done at the middle school as well as at the high school. So we've aligned that ARD process from top to bottom. Our goals are now being written the same way at each campus. Digital input forms have been sent out to all teachers, so they're all using the same form. So if we have parents that have students at multiple campuses, they're aware and they're familiar with the process all the way through. Our PLAFs all follow the same format now. So again, a lot of this is to help support parents so that they understand what we are actually doing in regards to our ARD process. This also helps.
Can you define PLAF for the?
So our PLAF is what we call our present levels. So these are the current, the information on how the student is currently performing.
I'm sorry to
That's okay,
break
sir.
your flow. And again, just for clarity on the PLAFs, it's an acronym. We have a ton of them in special ed, really in education, but more in special ed. Present level of academic achievement and functional performance. So those are two measures. Academic achievement is a cognitive, how I can function on the academic piece. The functional performance is a skill. Can I perform the actual skill? So it really measures two pieces that overlay there, and that's a big deal in us knowing where our kids struggle, whether it's the cognitive or the actual performing of the function. So I just wanted to add that for clarity. Thank you,
sir. So with the changes in the ARD process that we've done this year, this has really helped transition students from elementary to middle school and then from middle school to high school. It gives us a better understanding of what their IEPs look like and how we need to implement them. So approximately 95% of the ARDs that are taking place today in this district are being closed within 24 hours. So that could mean immediately after the ARD or by the next day. And the only thing that has caused a delay in that 24 hours are the speech-only ARDs. I do not conduct those. Those are done by the speech pathologist. So if a student is only speech, our speech pathologist takes care of those. If parents do not waive the 5 days for the implementation of services, I cannot close it within 24 hours. I have to wait the 5 days. If any ARDs were tabled, if additional assessment is requested during the ARD, any of our PPC, which was formerly PPCD, but is our ECSE, if we can't close those until they turn 3, so we may have the ARD a few days before their 3rd birthday, and we cannot close it until they turn 3. Or if there's any minor clerical errors that we pick up during the ARD, we just have the teachers correct those, and then we'll close them. Any questions?
I do have a question. So
Yes, ma'am.
you guys brought uniformity across all 3 campuses, is what I'm understanding from you.
Yes,
As
ma'am.
opposed to what it was before.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
Yes,
good.
ma'am. Thank you. The next area that we've addressed this year is our progress monitoring. So previously, progress reports were done, but they were not able to be digitally saved in our eSped system. For some reason, our teachers didn't have that access or that capability, so everything was just printed. So this year, as we started reviewing progress monitoring, that is one area that we put training into for our special education teachers. And we also made sure that they had access to archive those. So all progress monitoring or progress reporting is now digitally saved in what we would consider the student's digital file. As far as district trainings, so what we did was we identified an important need for the district in regards to our special education. And we determined that accommodations and modifications were an area that we really needed to focus on, which that drives our IEPs and our student learning. So we conduct district-wide trainings in the fall and the spring. Our campus coordinators do work to continue to follow up with those trainings through PLCs. We do have a district accommodation and modification guide that was made available in your packet, and that was made available to every teacher in our district. We also created an online folder where we put any reference materials or resources that all of the district staff have access to. And I've also made myself available for teachers, general education, special education, and support staff who need additional training and support. So they'll reach out to me, I have a question on this and this, and I'll go sit with them in their conference and we'll review student IEPs, how do we modify this work, and we just kind of look at resources so that they know how to modify and accommodate appropriately. I know our administrators talked about our documentation system. So we looked at that from previous years. It was just, it was not as effective as we could utilize it. It wasn't monitored regularly, and it was only used to document our sessions. If we went and conducted an inclusion session, we'd put it in there. So this year we said, you know what, there's so much more to this system that we need to be doing. So what we did was we made sure that we had trainings in place for our campus administrators, our campus special education staff. They're the ones who input into that system. So we created whole group sessions and one-to-one sessions. So with the one-to-one, I went in and modeled an inclusion session and then modeled how to document it appropriately, and then gave them a kind of a template of what should be expected for them. Our campus administrators as well as the art facilitator monitor the data that's being inputted into that system on a regular basis. We've made recommendations and adjustments in regards to the expectation of that data. So our special education staff have received all clear and concise examples, and I believe in your packet as well, I incorporated what they previously looked at like and what they look like now, or what our expectation is and what we're working towards. The data that's being collected and documented is also being used to justify the supports and services for our special education students. So it ensures that the appropriate minutes are being serviced for each of those students, and it also allows for their IEPs to be written based off students' strengths and needs. So we're not just kind of guessing, oh, they need this, they need that. We have solid data to support why we're doing what we're doing in their IEPs. Our monthly SPED, we have monthly SPED touch point meetings with Dr. Castro, myself, and Ms. Carroll, and we visit those areas, our documentations. So that we know we have a clear process of what we're expecting our administrators or other campus staff to follow. In regards to transition, we did have a compliance review for SPP Indicator 13, and that was regarding our transition. We did have 2 students that were out of compliance on that, and after reviewing that with Mr. Pesina, it was not so much that the transition didn't occur, but the paperwork was not closed, going back to our art process, closing within a reasonable time, so it threw everything off. So what we did to make sure that we got back into compliance, I've attended a 6-series transition seminar through Region 20. We did create a CAP to address that issue with Ms. Carroll and myself, and Dr. Castro, I believe, was part of that. Our secondary staff did receive the clarifications and trainings for the transition. We did focus on this component at every ARD. So at the age of 13, we start introducing transition to the students. We don't write their full transition plan until they turn 16, but we start doing what we call an essence statement. And we start that earlier so that we make sure that we're not at any point ever going to miss transition for any of these students. And that's when we also start getting our students involved so that they can start discussing what their post-secondary goals are.
Excuse me, but
Yes, ma'am.
at any point, is there any kind of system or in the system that alerts y'all of any of this? That maybe something didn't,
It's-
wasn't followed through? Or that somebody didn't input the information? Because I know in the past, Ms. Vega, we've had issues where these things were not being documented. And therefore, that gets the school in trouble.
So it is through my eye. As I'm going through the art process, I have to cover each component. And so that's why it's really important that I am reviewing these prior to art, which makes it, that's how we are able to close them within that timeline, because we've worked with our teachers to follow our process so that everybody knows and their responsibilities are done, so we can move on to the next step to avoid those type of errors instead of trying to do things last minute. And
Right.
so that's why we've created that process to ensure that those things don't happen
And then get in trouble for not
and get out of
documenting.
compliance. Yes, ma'am. So when we look at our student records for special education, previously, all special ed records were kept just at the cluster. So everything was housed in Pearsall. No documentation was kept on our campuses, and that was through previous administration. So currently, upon closing any of our ARDs, that documentation is now kept at the campus level as well as sent over to the cluster. So what they have over there, we have here, with the exception of our testing probes, because there's only one copy of that. But they get, and then the parents also get their copy of whatever we went through at that art process as well.
So at that particular time, the parents are aware of what their student or their son or daughter, what stage they're at and what's going on with it?
Yes, ma'am. They have access to the full IEP. Say that again, sir? It is saved digitally, but in case there's ever anything, we keep a hard copy here in district and then one at the cluster. So we have a digital file and then we have a hard copy file. So one of the highlights of this year, was really excited to be a part of this process. The state put out what they call the Supplemental Special Education Services, and this was available to students who met certain criteria. So what we did is the state was offering up to $1,500 for students to use towards anything related to special education. It could be speech therapy, it could be any kind of technology devices, anything that they could use to enhance their special education services. So we went through, at the time we were at 165 special ed district-wide, so I went through each student and said, okay, would this one qualify, would this one qualify? And we determined that 27 out of the 165 students would qualify for those services.
22?
Say that again?
22?
22, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry. 22 out of the 165 would qualify. So we made phone calls to each of those families, and we explained what the SES was, and we also followed it up with an email of the documentation. And of course, it wasn't through the district, so it wasn't something that we had control over, but we knew that some of our students would benefit from it. So we put that information out to them, and actually we did receive, I got a text a couple of weeks ago from one of the families, and she was so excited because her student actually qualified, so she was going to get that money to support him with his needs. So we could have had others who qualified, who went through the process and qualified. Nobody just reported back, but that family did, so
Oh, wow.
I think that was a
Good feedback.
highlight, something that we should definitely celebrate. I know administrators talked about our campus coordinators, so we did implement one at each campus this year. They are my point of contact, which really allows for a flow of communication. So if there's concerns, if there's any issues, they come directly to me. And if there's issues with related services, then I can also branch out to support that through the cluster. They have established their weekly meetings with their administrators, it makes a world of difference when you're looking at ARDs and stuff every week. Then we are all on the same page with that. We also implemented staffings this year. And what that consists of, it's really to discuss students' data prior to an ARD. So if we're expecting to make a significant change in a student's ARD, we don't want to be doing that during the ARD, or we don't want that to happen right before. So we like to meet with our ARD committee, and we discuss any of those changes and review significant data prior, so we are all on the same page and we know what we're going to be proposing going into the ARD. It has really helped determining placements and making those changes necessary for student success. Without the parent, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so we as a school have an idea of what direction we're going to present. When we look at our reevaluations, previously a lot of them were out of compliance, and a lot of that was due to COVID. Last year, when COVID hit, it shut down our schools, and so a lot of our evaluation couldn't get our students tested within the 45 school days. A lot of that was, all over the place. So currently, all of the students have been scheduled for those reevaluations, or have already had them to put their full and individual evaluations back into compliance. And I know Ms. Zelda doesn't get enough credit, but she does a really great job of gathering that documentation for our assessment personnel and collaborating with myself and our evaluators. So she does such a great job in supporting. Our cyclical review, this is what we called our desk audit, and this took place in October. So I was 2 months into the position and kind of like, this was so new to us. So, and of course we had our new administrator, and so we were all, okay, let's get this going and let's figure out where we're at. So with our compliance, there's 7 areas that they look at. Okay, within those areas, it breaks them down by domains. So in your packet, I did give you the whole domains, and I believe it's like the rubric. That's what they're looking at. So I broke down our cyclical review in that. So when we're looking at our first area, child find, evaluation, and FAPE, there's 8 domains in that area. They reviewed 18 out of 18 policies, and they were all compliant. When they reviewed 3 out of 22 files, only 3 of the 22 were compliant. 4 out of the 8 domains were compliant, and out of those 4 domains, 3 of them required a corrective action plan. So you may look at like only 3 were compliant. That's horrible. Well, those 3, what it was is the other, 19? It had to do with, a lot of it had to do with this part over here. We talked about the evaluations, our timelines. And what they were looking at is they wanted documentation that communication, effort, and all that, even though our timelines were out because of COVID. So that's where that comes into effect. And we do have, it breaks it down for you in depth. But as we go through it, you'll see that we actually did really well on this one.
Despite COVID.
Despite COVID, yes, ma'am. So we look at our IEP development. Out of 11 domains, 5 out of 5 policies were compliant, 18 out of 22 files were compliant, 9 out of 11 domains were compliant, and we did not have to do a corrective action plan. With the IEP content, 3 out of 3 policies were compliant, 22 out of 22 files were compliant, and our 5 out of 5 domains were compliant. For the IEP implementation, we had 21 out of 21 policies were compliant, 22 out of 22 files were compliant, and 10 out of 10 domains were compliant. Properly constituted ARDs, 8 out of 8 policies were compliant, 21 out of 22 files were compliant, 16 out of 17 domains were compliant, and the 1 file that was non-compliant, it was simply a clerical error, a checkbox. So we didn't have to do a cap on that one. For state assessment, 6 out of 6 policies were compliant, 17 out of 22 files were compliant, 9 out of 10 domains were compliant, 1 domain required a corrective action plan. And that had to do with what we call our intensive program of instruction. So the discrepancy on this one is we didn't have STAR last year. So we didn't have any STAR to make an intensive program. Well, we were not aware that they wanted their previous STAR data. So we had one cap to do for that one.
Brief interjection. For those of y'all who are familiar with special ed and a lot of these terms, IPI used to be called AIPI, so it's just shortened now, and the new term is just IPI. It's not a different or new one. It just replaces AIPI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next compliance area was transition. 6 out of 6 policies were compliant. 5 out of 7 files. 16 out of 18 domains were compliant. However, there was no cap needed on that one. So when we look at the overall of our cyclical review, we have non-compliance that we can easily fix, and they're in the process of being corrected. We had 2 systemic concerns, which were our timelines and our evaluation, and that is being addressed at the cluster level. CAPS, which is our creative action plans, have all been created and submitted for those 4 areas, and all ARDs have been scheduled to identify any area that was out of compliance. Those ARDs are due by April 22nd. And the one thing to keep in mind when we're looking at those non-compliance ARDs, all we have to do is identify that free appropriate public education was not interrupted. And as we reviewed those, that was the case. So FAPE was never interrupted on any of those students. And that completes my special education report. Are there any questions?
Well, I'm glad that you're here presenting what's been going on, because that has always been an ongoing issue. And I'm glad that you guys are working together and being able to unify the campuses to where everybody's doing the same type of paperwork, because you do have parents that have multiple students in all levels, so that makes it hard trying to keep up with all that. So I'm glad that you guys are doing such a great effort to unify everything and to correct all the things that needed to be corrected.
From previous, yeah.
Recently, I went to an art with my daughter, and I saw the difference from last year to this year. It's a simplified process. I mean, they're very thorough, they know what they're doing, their documentation is there. I have my closeout documents within 20 minutes once I closed out my Zoom meeting with Amanda.
That's good.
Thank you.
The process was great.
That's good.
Yeah, I also want to follow on with that I'm glad that we're coming across and having it all the same. I truly will honestly tell you that I would have been very disappointed for years. I'm glad you have come in and helped us and improve it with your team, of course. I also have always been concerned to make sure, of course, I'm sure you take care of that it's bilingual, and get down to the level of those families that don't understand your big words, and get down to their level, because you know how I've been across some people and they don't understand. So please, I ask that of y'all with you and your team, and especially with the transitions when they're ready to be graduating is a very big concern and overwhelm for not only the student but for the families. And please assist those that you really have to get down to their level.
So the good thing, Ms. Alvarez, with that is we do have, if there is a translator needed, we do have to stipulate that in our ARD paperwork, and our process the paperwork in eSped, with the click of a button, I can change that whole document to a Spanish document or to any language. And one of the things that I do want to let you know, like Mr. Aranda stated, after each area that we discuss, I make it a point to ask, do you have any questions? Did you understand? And even if at the time they're like, oh yeah, we always, at the end of our ARD, we go over again what we covered again.
Awesome.
And then I always tell them, you have my number. I give everybody, all parents, my personal cell number. I'm like, reach out to me after if you have questions. I'll be more than happy to explain it all over again.
Awesome.
You know, I'm from here, so most
You
of
know
them already
everybody,
know
yeah.
me, and that's, so it just makes it so much easier when they get out of the ARD, and then they'll reach out and if they have questions.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's what I just wanted to bring up, because I know there was issues I've worked with families before, and that was two of the main concerns. Some of them didn't understand they were not getting to their level, and they didn't understand this big step of their goal after they graduate.
And the cluster is actually working on adding more art facilitators so transition can be one person. And so that she can focus on that right there, on getting those, bringing in the resources and getting transition squared away.
Okay. Well, thank you for the great job.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you
so
and
much.
good night.
Sir?
Yeah, thank you to our principals and to Ms. Vega. Also noteworthy are our inclusion aides, our inclusion teachers. A lot of effort, a lot of work in trying to align the work in special ed. Thank you, board, for putting up with us through a lot of information as we gave you a comprehensive update of the efforts this year. I'm hopeful that we're going to see payoffs of academic achievement with all of our special ed students as we move forward to close the year out and next year. So thank you so much for hanging with us through a lot of information. We do have a final presentation. It is transportation and facilities. There's nothing particularly new, just updates on buses that had some updates or repairs, and then just facilities, grounds updates to include multi-chem lawn, etc. Nothing of substance other than the regular things to report to you, unless you have any questions on either of those. That would conclude our reports and presentation for you this evening from Superintendent's reports.
Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda, which is all in your board packet. We have the minutes of previous meetings, budget reports, monthly investment, tax collection, bills for payment, overnight student travel, which we have the Dilley High School band trip 2022, high school golf teams, regional, state, and then we have the fundraisers, middle school, high school band, and Dilley High School volleyball, girls basketball, all in your board packet.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, if I could just briefly address overnight travel, Daily High School band trip. Yes, sir. Thank you. The idea is that band would go to Florida 20, as you see there, 2022, proviso being the COVID pandemic is ameliorated and we're in a lot better shape. So given travel is safe for our kids nationwide, that would be set for summer of 2022. So the overnight travel then would be that piece. It would be 1 week in Florida. Our band kids would spend time there working at the let's say again. Yes, and where the movie, the sound engineer, where you make movies. Universal Studios. I am so sorry. Yes, thank you, Ms. Smith. Universal Studios. They will go through the process of creating a movie and creating the music for that movie. An amazing opportunity for our young people. We are planning it as a little over a year in advance. Kudos to Ms. Roberts and the visioning of giving our young people an opportunity to really interject music into videos. Into a movie screen opportunity. So, again, this approval from you tonight would allow them to go ahead and start doing fundraisers and begin identifying chaperones, etc., for that potential really exciting trip for our young people.
Will you allow the seniors next year to go, or they can't go? How does that work?
The seniors for next year, yes, they would be allowed to go. Even though they're graduated, they still would be able to participate. Excellent question.
Fundraising.
With the fundraising, it got into the parents, so make sure it's coordinated well, because last time it was a big mess.
Okay, great point. Thank you for that heads up.
Alrighty, so do I hear a motion?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Motion's been made by Kay Smith. Seconded by Juanita Alvarez. All in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Next, we have our action items. First item is the Dilley ISD 2021-22 school calendar.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of the board, Ms. Carroll will provide you just a summary brief. We did look at a couple of options to include an intersessional calendar. An intersessional calendar would provide sort of like multiple week-long opportunities throughout the year for intervention. But after a lot of consideration and discussion, we did opt to stick with the current traditional calendar. Mrs. Carroll?
Yes, that's correct. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. I'm trying to show my camera, and for some reason I can't find it right now, so I apologize. Oh, here we go. Hold on. There we go. No, I just wanted to add what Dr. Castro said, as we did bring 2 calendar options to our committee. And after discussion on different types of calendars, we did come up with the traditional calendar, which does basically follow the schedule that we followed this school year. And also, we are continuing to keep the 180 school days so that we can apply for additional school days funding for summer school for the following school year. So that's basically, I know, as you can see, we've still got the time off at Thanksgiving, the 2 weeks off at Christmas. We have the stock show Friday, spring break, and then graduation is going to be the 27th of May. So we still graduate in May.
And so again, tonight we're asking for your approval of this calendar so we can go ahead and notify the public, parents, and students for next year's school calendar.
Does anyone have any questions? If not, do I hear a motion? Motion's been made by Juanita Alvarez, seconded by Frank Torres. All in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item is discussion and possible action on the renewal of food service management company contract.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of the board, the next item we'll ask your approval on is a third-year renewal of a 5-year contract with A+. The food service management company we've used for the last 2 years. Included in the board documents tonight do include the debarment certification requirements, anti-collusion affidavit, as well as the lobbying certification under regular federal requirements. But essentially, to my surprise, I did anticipate a loss with food service that would require us to tap into the food service fund balance. But we are looking to add between $34,000 and $43,000 of money back into the additional money into our food service fund balance as a surplus. A+ did an extraordinary job of really pivoting and changing how much food we ordered and prepared. They've been outstanding in helping us not only provide curbside pickup, but also home food delivery. I know numerous times Rosaura went out herself in her personal vehicle and delivered food to kids in need. And Mr. Gene Sheets, the president and CEO of A+, extremely responsive, responds immediately when I call or text. I do appreciate that. I know during the Uri closure with the ice storm and loss of power, it was brought up as a potential. Could we, start giving away some of the food before it spoils? They came out and looked at food with flashlights and determined there was some food that was going to spoil soon. And again, under federal laws, we can only give it to students and students who have parents. So we went into the summer feeding opportunity and say, if you do have a kid at all that's school age, hasn't been school, to pick up food, we did determine it was a bit risky, because we weren't for sure what food had spoiled or not spoiled. So we ultimately opted not to send the food out. But I do share that story because it does highlight A+'s flexibility and willingness to adapt to our needs. So again, they've been a good partner. I've appreciated working with them. So tonight we just ask you to renew year 3 of our 3-year annual renewable contract with A+.
And no changes in their fees.
No, ma'am, the fees are exactly the same. Yes,
so
ma'am.
that's good.
And then the additional surplus We can only use it for food services, right?
That's correct. One of the things that we are looking to use some funding is for, at the high school, we were looking to purchase tables to put on the outside, you know, in that practice field facing there. So put some tables as we continue to have more students arrive. We would purchase tables and then some umbrellas. And we're also looking at misters to provide a cooling effect and see if we can create an opportunity sort kind of outdoor eating area as well. So that's one of the things we're looking at with some of the surplus.
Anybody else have any other questions? If not, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the third-year renewal of our fifth-year contract with Food Service Management Corporation A+ for the 2021-2022 school year.
Motion's been made by J.D. Rodriguez,
I second it.
seconded by K. Smith. All in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item is consider and possible action to amend the January 2021 board resolution to allow for leave due to COVID-19 related reasons.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of the board, upon request, we've brought this back to you. In January, you were gracious enough and generous enough to approve COVID pay for 80-hour extension. We have not had anyone take advantage of it this spring so far. The COVID extension was the COVID pay was part of what the federal government paid in the fall. If anybody contracted COVID, they did have 80 hours of eligibility to use so that they wouldn't lose pay in the fall. We did have 5 individuals that used those federal funds and tapped into it. The federal government did not re-up that for this spring. You were generous enough to allow our employees to have that opportunity this spring. Just as a reminder, your generosity came in large part because those that would be most impacted would be like custodians, clerks, food service workers who, they're the lowest compensated. But they don't work as hard as anyone. Teachers, administrators, and others are often in a position to be able to work remotely, so that wasn't much of a need there. So the modification today, the resolution would ask for an amendment to that approval that you gave. The amendment is highlighted there towards the bottom of the resolution, and I will read it. Well, I'll just read that one paragraph. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Dilley Independent School District authorizes providing additional paid leave for our regular employees, contractual and non-contractual, salaried and non-salaried, who are instructed not to report to work during the epidemic, and will only, this is the modification, will only apply to those employees who have received their COVID-19 vaccination. An appeals process will be created for employees needing a special exemption. So again, the modification again would apply only to employees who have opted to receive their COVID vaccination. We do recognize that there may be some cases where it's a medical exemption that's physician says, hey, you don't need to be getting the COVID at this time due to some medical exemption. Questions on that resolution modification?
For the total?
Yes, sir, and that was what was paid in the fall, and remember that would be covered under a federal stimulus. Yes, sir, CARES Act. So it was paid out, but reimbursed to us by federal funds.
Anybody else have any other questions? If not,
Yes, sir, it's what you've already approved in January, and it would be a revised one based on COVID vaccination. But it also created an appeals process for anyone who has a verified medical exemption.
so it was what you read and highlighted? Kim?
Yes, ma'am, correct.
So in the motion, do we need to specify the revised copy?
Yes, sir, the modified or revised or amended resolution.
I hear a motion?
I make a motion that the board adopt the amended board resolution to extend district leave to the COVID-19 related reasons as specified in the resolution. I further move that the signed copy of the resolution be attached to the minutes of this meeting.
Motion's been made by J.D. Rodriguez. Seconded by Juanita Alvarez. All in favor? None opposed. Motion carries.
Madam President, that concludes our items for this evening. We've already met in executive session with our attorney, so at this juncture, at the pleasure of the board, we can move to adjourn.
I thought you had you have stuff back here for bond of the high school, construction of new bus, renovation of existing high school, and additions and renovations to the existing elementary.
My apologies. We do need to talk about that briefly. Thank you, guys. It's the sugar low that I was drinking.
At this time, we will now reconvene back into executive session at 9:58 p.m.
reconvene back into open session at 10:29 PM. At this time, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion's been made by Kay Smith. I second it. Seconded by Juanita Alvarez. All in favor? None opposed. Meeting adjourned at 10:29 PM.